Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett and today we are going to be talking all things that go vroom, and that is particularly the Ravenwing. So Ravenwing have been increasingly relevant in the competitive scene with some success with Company of Hunters in the States, but also I think there's an element where maybe the way that the meta is shaping up that actually bikes might be back. It's a completely unvalidated theory, but it's one that I feel like maybe when the slate does come out, that we might be able to go, okay, that potentially is a way that we can play and be in a good position. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about sort of the current state of play with Ravenwing units, which ones might be good, which units complement the Ravenwing in general, and then how you can kind of get the most out of them by playing them in certain detachments. Obviously, this might be completely irrelevant as of next Wednesday, because it might be that we suddenly get locked to our own detachments or something like that when the slate drops. I'm guessing the sit drops next Wednesday. They said early September. That's the last that's the last Wednesday of early September that we'll have. So that's my shot in the dark. They don't give me an NDA. I'm too much of a twat. But I think ultimately we're going to go over what might be good. If not a huge amount changes. I think Dark Angels, as I've covered in like a million videos now, are going to get light buffs. I think the Lion's probably going to get a little bit of love. I think maybe we'll see some points drops past that. Probably not a huge amount, but I think the meta is also going to get a lot friendlier to us. So Ravenwing, I like their speed. They are fast as fuck. So particularly the fact that they, in most of the detachments you would play them in, there's baked in rules that make them go faster, be that advance, shoot, charge, or just advance and charge, or the ability to auto advance a certain number of inches, or redeploy and sticky objectives, all that kind of stuff. It just really lets you grab the momentum and keep hold of it, which I really like. And the nice thing alongside that momentum is that because bikes are becoming incredibly cheap, obviously it's 3 Outriders for 80 points currently. They're surprisingly survivable because they take 2-3 damage shots to kill them, just because they're 4 wounds and that kind of stuff. And it tends to be that if you can sort of sap those larger elite killing shots into what is ultimately an 80-point unit, then I think you're in a really good spot. Obviously, once we put in characters, usually we're probably wanting to take 6 Outriders. It becomes a lot more expensive, but comparatively to other Space Marine units, say Deathwing Knights, point per model, they are significantly cheaper, and yet they've still got that positive survivability. So I think there's definitely an element where, strangely, they are more survivable than they should be, but we're going to touch on that a little bit later. Damage output, actually pretty good, especially with the Outrider change with that +1 strength and +1 damage on the charge. I really like that, but it really does need that fallback and charge, because if it doesn't kill it in that first whack, really you need to be able to get back away and then go for it again. And then finally, there's a couple of different options of detachment. And I know my personal favourite. I think that's probably going to go against the grain in terms of particularly my US audience and what they've seen doing some good success. But that might just be a difference between GW terrain versus UKCC and WTC terrain. But right now, I think a lot of it comes down to sort of that survivability side of things that I really like catching my opponents out on. So I think that's probably why I'm going to lean the way. You can guess that I'm probably going with Stormlance. I'm going with Stormlance, but we're going to cover more detail around that later on. So, benefits to Ravenwing. I've kind of touched on this already. They're really quick. So, minimum move of like 12 inches. Then usually the detachments that we would consider playing them in, they've got access to that advanced shoot, charge, all that kind of stuff that we've already talked about. And they don't get to breach, which is meaningful. And it does sort of damage them on particularly maybe something like UKCC, where there's not those bases that overhang, like you see on WTC and I think on some GW setups. So that's slightly different, I think. Not being able to breach does harm them. And I think there was a period of time where we saw on UKTC that really you just couldn't play mounted very efficiently at all. But I think with these map changes and the way that now there is the large L in the center with the bit of terrain that you can go over, I think there's more scope for doing that now. And then I think with WTC, there's definitely that scope to sort of nip over some of those flat bits of the terrain so that you can just go straight through. And I think there's similar with GW as well, with the way that they do the bases of their ruins. So you can stay safe, but also then get through reasonably quickly. So they still retain that speed, even though they can't breach. Obviously, that is subject to some amount of change, because if suddenly things went completely different in how maps are done, or if locally your terrain sets, they don't have that kind of space. If you're playing GW and it doesn't have that kind of base plus ruin on top that doesn't cover all the base, that does reduce the efficiency of Ravenwing, because you can't hide them as well. They are a big old unit. They're difficult to hide. They're worth it, but they are difficult. But that speed is very powerful. I don't really need to wax lyrical about how 12 inches plus an advance plus charge is good. I've had games where, particularly with Stormlance, I've auto-advanced 9 inches, used the Ravenwing command squad to add an extra inch to my charge, not the advance, because you didn't roll it. That doesn't count, I'm afraid. So then suddenly I've gone, 21 inches plus 2d6 plus 1 to whack into something. And I think in that case, I also had the CP to give rerolls and Lance, and I just one-shot a tank. And then suddenly I had this Ravenwing blob just in my opponent's backfield. So my Deathwing Knights then got to just sit on the objectives and just kill things. That's back at Nottingham. And I really, really miss playing that unit. I think that's probably some of the most fun I've had. So equally, there is an element where maybe I am slightly looking at this with rose-tinted glasses, because I really do enjoy that unit, particularly the 3 Ravenwing command squad. Then the 6 Outriders, just for that survivability. But touching on that unit again, their OC is exceptionally good. You can just go, right, I've got 27 OC. They're going to sit on your expansion because they're fast enough to get there and contest it, and I'm going to resurrect a dude a turn. It just really, not a turn, sorry, a battle round. But it really screws with your opponent in terms of just how much you can dominate the battlefield. And because, again, the size of those bases, you could technically stretch across 2 objectives quite happily. And all you need is 2 bikes on one of those to suddenly out-OC most key small units, which then gives you that option of just going, okay, I'm going to hold these. I'm going to force you to come at me and kill this unit that, I think it's just over 250 points. Can't remember the exact cost. I think it's 280. Yeah, it's 280. Quick maths, which is funny because usually I screw up my quick maths. 280, and they are. Yeah, it's 280. There was a panic there. And yeah, that's a reasonable portion of your army. But considering we're happy to chuck away Deathwing Knights who are 1 OC, obviously a lot more survivable, but we're happy to chuck them away to secure objectives after sort of skirmish has gone in. There's an element of why couldn't it be these guys instead? I think you can definitely make the argument, Deathwing Knights are a lot more survivable. But are they in certain metas? And I think the more that we see more 3 damage, suddenly the bikes that take 2-3 damage shots and care less about the fact, obviously with Deathwing Knights, their real strength is into that 2 damage meta. And I think Outriders really thrive in that 3 damage meta. So it's a huge potential around what kind of meta you're facing as well. At the moment, we're seeing a lot of new data sheets that are 3 damage and really quite good. Votan, obviously Death Guard. There's been a few others. I mean, Knights, if they continue to be strong, and it does look like Imperial Knights will continue to be good. And I imagine they will actually probably drop in points when their Codex comes, because it's only, I think, the Feel No Pain that's keeping them higher in Games Workshop's view. That's a guess, but looking at history, I have a feeling that they are going to come down a little bit. Only probably to go up a little bit later. But Hopefully I'm wrong in that regard. But that plethora of 3 damage out there is really problematic. If suddenly we get into a meta where everything is 4 damage, say like a ton of Atropos, Canis stays at 4 damage, let's say, and then everyone else is playing DDAs, then maybe not the bikes. But equally, again, I don't know 80 divided by 3, but it ain't too much. So I wouldn't worry a huge amount. And that ability to just like kind of cause that number of issues for your opponent with such a cheap unit, I really like it. And like considerably what they're going to have to do to get rid of it, particularly in Stormlance where you can just pop that -1 to hit, -1 to wound. And I know obviously we've got Windswift Evasion in Company of Hunters, which is the -1 to hit, but I always think that -1 to wound is just like so much more meaningful. Like it's kind of that combination of Wrath and Windswift Evasion, but also it's not like the Wrath one, which is slightly worse than this. This is just a flat, this is -1 to wound. So suddenly those bolters that usually might, try and spike on those 5s, they're only wounding you on 6s, which is quite meaningful. Because if they're trying to chip damage just so they can get enough through in that combat phase, so they can take out all of the unit, maybe they don't manage it. There's a lot of things there that I think massively elevate that particular unit. And I really love it, to be perfectly honest. It's one of my favourite units. But that OC was a huge part that I think people didn't realise. And when I went, by the way, this is a 27 OC brick, most opponents pooed themselves. So that's always good. When your opponent poos themselves, that is quite helpful. Even if you don't have the Ravenwing Command Squad, as just little skirmish guys, they're all 2 OC apiece. So if you get 3 Outriders on an objective, that's an 80-point unit that's not getting outscored by a Deathwing Knight unit. So then they have to go and kill that Outrider unit, and then they're exposed. So it's those reasons where it's like, I'm going to put 6 OC on this. This is going to cause you problems. And I think this is a really, really good example where they can do that. I also really like the fact that it dodges the anti-infantry keyword. I think the best example, and I've talked about this a little bit before, was Lilith Hesperax, where usually Lilith and 10 Witches just absolutely tenderizes any unit that they go into. But because my Outriders were mounted, they only killed 2 and a bit Outriders. And then those Outriders managed to hold, and because they held, they essentially just won me the game and got me a big points differential for that team's game, which was quite meaningful. So, I think dodging the anti-infantry keyword is quite important, particularly as we are seeing more out of, say, Death Guard and things like that. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see more out of Drakari as well when they get their codex. And I imagine that's only just around the corner. So, if they keep doing that kind of stuff, I think that, this could be really, really good in that upcoming meta. Which is quite exciting. I really like the ability to just like kind of nullify those anti-infantry shooting. If AdMech sort of suddenly, if there's a meta where they become stronger, they've got a lot of anti-infantry shooting as well out of their Skitari, and also that -1 OC doesn't matter as much. Obviously, it kind of still matters, but not as badly. And if you get that big brick on, you can't just have like Skitari pop on and cause issues that way. It's quite nice. But let's talk about the sort of the weaknesses. And I think the fact that I mentioned both Drakari and AdMech really brings us onto this very nicely, because what I really worry about, and I've said this in my Discord before, is just how blockable that unit is. 9 bikes, particularly when they're on an Outrider base size, it's big. I mean, obviously it's only 6 Outriders and then 3 slightly smaller bases, but like you've still got to be able to get them through. And obviously when they can't breach, there is more scope to be able to block them. So it's something that you need to really bear in mind when you're building your army. And again, there's nothing out of Space Marines that is just like crazy good in Overwatch. There's no like catch-all flamer unit. There's like the Reaper. And there's the Reaper and the Redeemer. Redeemer, I think, is just too expensive. At 285, we're already trying to pack in enough expensive units. I struggle with that personally to justify its cost. And then the Reaper, I really like the Reaper. I just haven't quite found the right home for it yet in Dark Angels. I think if we suddenly start seeing a lot more T3 stuff flying around, so be that Eldari, Drakari, all that kind of stuff, I would be keen to get, a Reaper in there pretty damn quick. So I just think that's super powerful, and it's able to really punish people. But at this point, I think they're just a little bit too blockable. Like, I think you can just get, 70, 80 point unit in front of that big blob of bikes, and suddenly it's stuck. And then it's lost a fifth of its efficiency. And that causes real issues. That's why I kind of like going across to Company of Hunters and going, okay, well, I can scout this to make sure it's not going to get blocked early by like an infiltrating unit if they go first. And I've also got the option of having one in reserve and then rapid ingressing it using that stratagem that allows you to come in a turn, not stratagem, sorry, the enhancement that allows you to come in a turn earlier, which is, I feel like the enhancements for Company of Hunters are significantly better than the enhancements for Stormlance. Although now I'm panicking that Stormlance has the same thing. I don't think it does, but now I'm worrying. If it does, sorry, I'm an idiot. But yeah, so there's that option. But the stratagems out of Stormlance are significantly better. And I think there's that kind of brings us on to the next problem that they've got, which is that survivability. If they do get caught out in the open, if your opponent's able to put enough shooting power into it and you're not in, say, Stormlance with the -1 to hit and wound, you are going to be struggling. There's a lot of wounds in that unit. It's a thick unit. It's 24 wounds just on the Outriders, then plus the additional 9, so it's 33 wounds. That's hard to get through. And there's ways that you can take it on the command squad instead, because only the champion is the character, so you can like take it on the ancient instead and then res the ancient, etc., etc. So there's tricks, and there's some really nice tricks, but I just worry in terms of its survivability, because like if suddenly you get, say, the Stormlance Ultramarines list that is just packing melters out the wazoo, you're going down real quick. And if there's like a lot of melters in a meta, I think you're getting real problems caused for you very, very fast. So that's just something that's worth bearing in mind as to like a potential weakness for it. And then the only other thing is that Knights are not survivable. That 3 wound profile for Ravenwing Black Knights just sucks. Ravenwing Black Knights are probably the one that I would really, at this point, just not talk about. Let's say they get a wound in the slate and they go up to 4 wounds. I don't think that's happening until they get Primarist. But let's say it does happen. Holy crap, that's amazing. That could be so good for them. At this point, I don't see it happening. So they just die to their own plasma. And they die very quickly to those 3 wound profiles. At that point, it's a 5-up save. I know they're significantly cheaper, but I'm probably having to put 6 in, and probably having to put a character in. Like, why am I not just going for a unit of Deathwing Knights at this point? So, problematic, I think, in my opinion, on that one. Trying to think of sort of those different potential options, but it does always come back to Outriders. And I do think that they do struggle into that high toughness, good armor save stuff, because a lot of their stuff is just AP1, so those chain swords in particular, just AP1. And yes, you get better AP out of Ravenwing Black Knights, because -3 on the plasma, -2 on the hammer, all that kind of stuff. It's also dev wounds. But I just think if you take them, you're compromising your survivability and you'll get killed too quickly. It's really annoying because Ravenwing Black Knights are literally just like 1 wound away from being this incredible unit that we will just suddenly start spamming. And I know I've got some upstairs, so I'm really keen for them to be good. But it's one of those where it's just like they've just not got that survivability. If they get 1 wound in the slate, then you will see me probably spamming at least one of those units if we still have access to Stormlance. Again, God, so much could change. But at this point in time, the units that are relevant struggle into those high toughness and good armor save units, which is again another point for Stormlance, because you just have the ability to access Lance, which makes life significantly easier. Obviously, you're still only wounding big knights on 5s, which is problematic with Lance. If it went up to strength 6, but your champion is going up to strength 6, which is very meaningful. Suddenly he's got Lance, suddenly he's wounding on 4s, and he's chopping through things pretty damn quickly, because he's 3 damage, and he'll start taking wounds off him real nice and speedy. So there is an element of that to it. I know that strength 6 was like a little bit more problematic against knights when they were T12, and I did have that problem a few times, but now, mucho bueno. So that's slightly better, but that's only with playing that specific detachment. I know there is access to a +1 to wound in Company of Hunters. It's shit. So I don't really get the point of it, like compared to just Lance reroll charges, which is just absolute don compared to it. Anyway, Detachment, that brings us on nicely, doesn't it? I like that Company of Hunters leverages shooting. I like that it also leverages the fast vehicles as well, your storm speeders. I think they're really cool. And I think there's a lot of potential there, because suddenly like plasma going to wounding on 4s from a Thunderstrike into those vehicles, like hell yeah, that's going to cause some real problems for your opponent. And then so they, loads of plasma that wounds on 4s in there, then they charge it. I mean, there's still only 1 damage in combat, so they're not doing anything to a knight. But like maybe between the plasma and their shooting, they're taking down a normal battle tank. Again, that 1 damage out of them in charges is just really shit. But oh well, doesn't matter. It's what we've got. But I think giving that +1 to wound, and particularly with Outriders, actually, when they've got twin linked on their guns, like if you can leverage it, like this is not bad. It's still bolter with twin linked. A bolt rifle with twin linked, so it's still got AP1. Like it's not awful. And I think there's elements where you can really push it forward with that, which will definitely help you if you are on more open boards. Obviously, I think that it becomes less important on things like WTC, where you might not have those lines as easily. But like I still think the fact that there's those speeders, I quite like them for those lines. Stormlance is my pick. Stormlance, I think, is just the best. -1 to hit, -1 to wound, auto advance 9 inches. It does have like access to additional AP in an enhancement, which is nice on the Ravenwing command squad. Obviously only on the champion, but you get me. He's the guy that's doing a lot of the killing anyway. Then you've got some like other just really interesting stuff that supports the rest of your army, while as Company of Hunters supports the shooting of the rest of your army, it doesn't support the combat, while as realistically we are still combat. Like if we are putting Deathwing Knights in, we want them to be able to advance and charge, not advance and shoot because they ain't got a gun. That's a slight problem. So, I think Company of Hunters is still very good and efficient, but it really needs that meta where the bikes are absolutely king, and where that you can leverage that speed and not get blocked. And I do worry with both Drakari coming out soon and Eldari sort of being back in a really strong position, that Company of Hunters will struggle from just getting blocked off. It doesn't have anything where it can like ghost through things. Maybe they need to introduce a stratagem where they just like, I don't know, they build a ramp and they just ramp over, and that would be great. I'd really enjoy that personally. But Stormlance, I think, is still king. That auto advance, you can give them assault anyway. Like, okay, we'll do that. But Lance and reroll charges is just so good. I absolutely love that stratagem. It's like, well, this is a slightly dodgy charge. I'm probably going to reroll it. I might as well give them Lance as well. Or it's like, I can't fail this charge and I need to be able to get into my opponent and kill them. I'll give them Lance and reroll charges. And also then suddenly you've got access to rerolling 2 charges, which is really nice. So I'm a big fan. I'm really missing my Ravenwing Command Squad. Can you tell? I just think they're awesome. I'm missing Stormlance. I'm missing the Ravenwing Command Squad. I probably will be back on this when the data slate drops because it's just fun and it's good. I don't know how good it is, and I really need to test that. But like, it's one of those where potentially I'm just going to go, fuck it. We'll find out. And like try and leverage a bit of skill to be able to get round those like poorer matchups. But I do think if I came up against like a strong Eldari player, I'd be in real trouble with that kind of list potentially. But I need to work that out. Maybe there's a way I can do it with some flamers or some sort of other nonsense. Or maybe like, I mean, they turn off Overwatch, don't they? Little bastards. Maybe there's some way. I will find a way. We will find a way or make one. And then finally, Lion's Blade. It's shit. Move on. No, jokes aside, Lion's Blade is not worth it, in my opinion, because cool, you gave a bonus of 2 to their charges. Well, you could have just rolled a dice and had advance and charge, and that dice is probably going to be a 3 or a 4. It just doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, Lion's Blade was just a bit of a miss. Again, our detachments are not good. Company of Hunters just about scrapes through. Wrath the Rock just about scrapes through. Not by much. Lion's Blade is scraping the barrel, unfortunately. So even though it's got something that allows you to go through walls, it ain't worth it. Don't bother. It's too many hoops to jump through. It's cute. Don't get me wrong. It's really cute, but it's a lot of hoops to jump through. So it's just not particularly worth it. Right, let's wrap up on what units might be really good for the Ravenwing. And I want to start with the Lion because he brings high AP, which is something they struggle with. He brings an ability to kill big things very efficiently. He helps them out by letting them reroll ones to wound and hit in combat, which is very tasty, especially when the Ravenwing Command Squad, the main champion, hits on 2s. He can give you that 4-up Theono Pain Aura, which, obviously then suddenly means that you're a little bit more survivable to certain armies that are out there at the moment. Alongside that, he can keep up with Ravenwing because of his uppy down ability. I don't think I'd use it very often because the other two are really good, but it's there, so it's an option. But I think the Lion covers a lot of those key problems, and also it just gives you that fights first unit because this army is very good at all-out aggression, but then it's kind of out there. And if your opponent's charging you, I think that can be a problem very quickly. Like if your opponent's not bothered about the fact you've got -1 to hit and wound and shooting, and then they go, oh, cool, I'm just going to charge you. Being able to go, well, I've got a fights first Primarch that's sitting right here. It's going to bum you. Like, good. When I say bum, I mean he's going to give him a little kiss on the forehead, because that's what the Lion does. But Lion I think is a really good starting point. Next up, we got a Vindicator. Apparently it's 2024 again. So Vindicator is in there because I think in Company of Hunters in particular, that just like auto advanced shoot is just tasty. It's 9-inch moving. It's pretty damn slow, but it's thick and chunky. It brings that significant like Titan killing pain. It goes faster because of the detachment ability. There's other things that you're doing that improve the way that a Vindicator wants to play, but also while your guys are sort of zooming around, causing OC issues and things like that, that's distracting your opponent's guns, which then means that Vindicator's sort of lack of range gets a little bit negated because suddenly then it's fewer anti-tank guns going into that Vindicator, where you can start sort of maybe trusting in that armor save, trusting in that T11, which I think just sort of allows that Vindicator to elevate itself. Similar for a Ballistus, but actually I think more in Stormlance because it's got that range. It can kind of clear the way of those key opposition units before your bikes sort of crash into the units that you do want them to crash into. I think you need multiple Ballistas. If anyone says Gladiator Lancer, no, naughty. I will explain. Gladiator Lancers are 2 shots. It's too easy to save one of those and then for a tank not to die. The Ballistus has other attributes because it can survive a lot longer. It's got better OC. It's just downright better. It can also heroically intervene, which is quite fun. It's the only tank that can. Well, it's not the only tank that can, but it's one of the few tanks that can. Then, shockingly, Ravenwing Command Squad and Outriders, they're quite good. We've kind of done a whole video on why they're quite good, so I don't need to really talk about them anymore. Ravenwing Command Squad in particular, like extra OC, reviving a dude a turn, and giving them free heroic intervention and an extra inch on advance and their charges. It's damn cool, and it's really damn useful. I really like that command squad for 120 points. It's 9 wounds of just pure goodness. The amount of rules that unit has is silly, and I love it. It's beautiful. The amount of times that I've just gone like, don't forget, I've got free heroic intervention here, and my opponent's done the charge anyway, and I'm like, well, that objective, I guess, is now mine, and I'm going to score it in my turn. Nice. So, yeah, that Ravenwing Command Squad, exceptional. Outriders, great way of delivering them. One of the best. They are my pick of the Ravenwing bike units right now because they just lubricate everything around them. They're cheap, they're efficient, they're just good, which I really like. Bike Chaplain, that was kind of thrown in. I've not used that myself, but that +1 to wound I think can be quite meaningful. Devastating wounds on twin link guns, not bad. And I think him going up to damage 3, again, quite tasty. There's ways that I think he's solid, but he does struggle a little bit with that AP. But you know who doesn't struggle with his AP? Samael. And Samael going up to damage 3 is absolutely disgusting. And particularly Samael with access to a lance ability. Oh, mama, that's going to do some real damage. Like, you go into that Oath unit, you just fish for those sustained 2s, you will kill the problem unit that you need to go into. And then if you want to pile into something else and they need to just like try and run away from you, they've got to take a desperate breakout. It's just so many nice things that Samael just adds complexity for quite a cheap cost, because usually it's just him and 3 dudes. Like, I don't mind chucking that unit away, but he is definitely going to trade up when he punches something. Finally, I've kind of mentioned it already, and I think maybe you could extend this to other flying vehicles. You could extend it to a Storm Raven, maybe, if you're a madman. But like a madman that I would be like, yes, that's really cool. And I can't lie, I have considered it myself, so maybe I am the madman. Well, actually, we all knew that, but you know. Thunderstrike, I think, just again, if you're going to struggle with armor, having +1 to wound into it is not bad. And it just, maybe that it helps with those Vindicators, helps with that Ballistas, all that kind of stuff. It's quick, it gets access to a lot of the defensive stuff that the bikes get as well. It's Ravenwing, yeah! I mean, this video is very much focused on like the bikes because I think they are the competitive elements of it. But I think the Thunderstrike does have a place. And for 150 points, like, it's good, especially if we do start seeing a lot more Knights again. I think we are going to see IK pop up quite a lot. Their codex just look really nice. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of CK. They are really good. It just then comes down to like maybe who are the other sort of top competitors for that. We'll have to wait and see. If Space Marines come back, then again, they usually pack a lot of vehicles. And there's a few other factions, like Sisters, that usually have like at least 3 of their shooty tanks. And also those sort of Nundums, they're also vehicles. So there's a lot of relevant units that the Thunderstrike does really help again with. But it's one of those where it's like, do I have enough shooting to justify this piece? It's a good question to ask, though. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me wax lyrical about all things Ravenwing bikes. I've done a couple of lists on the Discord, which look quite tasty, but I opted not to do a list because the slate is literally probably next week. So no point. It's going to be defunct. So I've tried to make this video as slate proof as possible. But obviously data sheets could change. So, there's always that. It's always fun being a content creator that doesn't actually get any info from GW. But, such is life. I hope you really enjoyed the video. I've really enjoyed making this one. It was a lot of fun. let me know what you want to see when the slate does come out. Let me know what you want to see me playing at the LGT Invitational. We should get our pods, and we should also get the format of the tournament soon. It's some of the best players in the world, and then me. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be real damn tough. But I'm really looking forward to it, and it's nice to be around so many brilliant people, and to be counted in their number, even if it's just for this tournament. It's very surreal for someone that ultimately I only started playing competitive at the start of 10th. I'd played a little bit before that, but not competitively. So I only really started at the start of 10th, and now I'm going to the LGT Invitational. It's mind blowing, but if you're going to LGT, I will see you there. I'm very much looking forward to seeing everyone at LGT. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And fingers crossed, I'm going to really try and go for it. And I'm going to be playing Dark Angels because I want to finish the season playing Dark Angels so that I can hopefully secure top Dark Angel in the UK. Ideally, that a good score would secure me top Dark Angel in the world. Again, possibly, potentially, maybe. I'm there still at the moment, but cross fingers, because obviously I can't go to LVO, and I'm probably not getting a golden ticket at this point. So, I mean, I might do, but I also don't think I could go to Atlanta in that time. So, let's hope. So I'm really looking forward to being back on Dark Angels, because I've had a slight sojourn where I've been murking out as a Blood Angel for a bit. And it's been fun, but it's reminded me of all the reasons that I love Dark Angels. So I'm looking forward to being back on them. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Glasshammer Gaming and Terrain Forge and Trident Futureworks. I've been Toby Bennett. You've been you. And remember, stay loyal, fuckers. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.